Hello, I'm Nathaniel Smith, and today I'm going to have a conversation on realism and fantasy. So, a while back, I was reading this book called Act of Will, and I was reading it, and the summary said it was a fantasy, and the cover has nothing in context with the actual novel. And as I was reading it, I just realized this is not a fantasy in any way, shape, or form. Let me explain why. Okay, here's the thing. Realism in fantasy can work, but you have to justify its realism, else it doesn't make any fucking sense. Let me give you an example. Raven's Gate. Now this is a book set on our Earth, where the main character, goes through this strange mystery and intricate mystery that eventually leads to magic and so forth, and has this epic finale of unleashed magic and all that. I don't want to get too into the book because it's not really a review I'm getting at. What I'm getting at was that this book, although realistic, justified its realism by being set in present-day Earth, like any urban fantasy, or I suppose even an historical fantasy if you wanted to set in the past, or maybe you want to hit fantasy in the future. And in some case, like Raven's Gate or Harry Potter, whatnot, it makes, if you want to make that more realistic, that's within reason because it's on Earth, so it makes sense. Now, to really get another world to be realistic, you basically need something along the lines of what Of Two Minds did, which is basically a sci-fantasy, and there's a lot of obvious moments of, well, science fiction in it, obviously, and yeah, there is, but again, the end sort of justifies it, and it's just a really good book. But getting back to the real point with why I'm so infuriated with Act of Will, there's really no magic in this book whatsoever, and what magic we have is so little, and it's just a freaking it's just a freaking flash of light. It's just, why? What? Let me put it this way. Let me put it in a way that makes sense. Okay. Why create another world with other names and other cities and other maps if you're just gonna make it like our fucking Earth? Like, exactly like our fucking Earth? To the letter, to the T, with little to no magic, little to no changes in animals or nature. Like, it's the same freaking animals. They could even, like, have extinct animals to use, like dodos or mammoths. No. They have to be our animals that we have now, and they have to have a world only similar, not similar, almost exactly like a certain place in historical society / city. And just, there's like no effort to actually try and make something imaginative. The whole point of fantasy is to not be real. And unless you have a logical justification for it, like being set on our Earth, or an altification of our Earth that is still called Earth, because it doesn't make sense why you would make an alternate history of something if you're going to set it on another fucking place that you're not really going to do anything different with. I'm not saying realism and fantasy is bad, but you have to justify it. You have to give a really good reason for letting it be real. And sort of let the audience know beforehand that it's real. That way, the reader doesn't read something and go, this isn't a fantasy at all and has little to nothing to do with fantasy. And it's just this really alternate variation of an alternate history that they're unwilling to admit is an alternate history, even though why the hell didn't you just admit it's an alternate history? Because then I wouldn't be as upset with it. So can realism work in fantasy? Yes. As I pointed out, I have books I have read in the past that are realistic fantasy, but they have a justification for being realistic. Creating another world and making it exactly like our world is not only... It not only makes no fucking sense, but it's a complete waste of time. Like, there's no point in doing it. Either make an actual fantasy world that's really all enthralled in fantasy and make-believe and imagination, like a good fantasy is supposed to be in another world, or if you want a realistic fantasy, justify its realism. Give us a reason why your fantasy is realistic. Otherwise, if you set it in another world, don't give any reason why it's so damn realistic, especially when you're in another world. Why would you make another world and make it so damn realistic? And if you're going to do it, justify it. Of Two Minds did. It did it because it's a sci-fantasy. It's a mix of science fiction and fantasy. Even in the very beginning, it sort of told you it was science fiction because the whole mind-reading thing. But something like Act of Will has literally no reason for being so frickin' realistic. No justification, no setup, no explanation. And to think that so many fantasies are either like this or just copycats of Lord of the Rings drives me nuts. Even because there is a lot of great fantasies. You just gotta look through a lot of crap like this.